It's the morning of Friday, August 2nd, and Bishop Richard Malone says he hasn't slept for 2 nights.
We're in a true crisis situation. True crisis. And everyone in the office is convinced this could be the end for me as bishop. It could force me to resign. If, in fact, they make a story.
He's in a one-on-one meeting with his trusted secretary, Father Richard Biernat, and the bishop is concerned about a brewing story regarding seminarians at Christ the King, allegations of love letters, and claims of sexual harassment by a diocesan priest.
I think we're gonna blow this story up into something like an atom bomb if we start talking about that, because then it sounds like a soap opera. It sounds like a love triangle, and you know what the media can do with that.
The story involves Biernat, who is on personal leave from the diocese, seminarian Matthew Bojanowski, and Father Jeffrey Nowak, pastor of this church in Cheektowaga. Bishop Malone says he doesn't want the full story to get out.
With all that else that's going on in the diocese, and all the attacks on my credibility, that I've known that something's going on here that shouldn't be, and I let it go. I mean, this is a disaster.
When the embattled bishop met with church officials Kathy Spangler and Steve Halter late last month, Malone said even his loyal advisors could feel the walls closing in.
But, they really scared me, and they kept saying this could be the end, Bishop. This could be the end.
Now, let's back up a second. The story starts here last year at Christ the King Seminary when Bishop Malone was notified that one of his priests was accused of sexually harassing a seminarian. The priest was Father Jeffrey Nowak, and seminarian Matthew Bojanowski disclosed that 2 years earlier, while he was considering the priesthood, Nowak began sexually pursuing him. Based on information, Bojanowski told the priest in the confessional.
After rejecting Father Nowak's advances and harassment, I had to endure many months of revenge and retaliation by Father Nowak and 2 other members of clergy, including slander and emotional abuse.
Bojanowski followed up with a written complaint to the bishop in January, and Bishop Malone huddled with advisors Father Peter Corrales, Father Jim Croglio, and Steve Halter in March to talk about Nowak.
Father Jeff Nowak has some serious issues. It's very clear that Jeff Nowak had what I think was a very, very unhealthy and inappropriate attachment to this Matt Bojanowski.
Kind of harassing Matthew.
More than harassing. To have, I think, it looks to me like he wanted to have an affectionate and even intimate relationship.
They refer to Nowak's Facebook messages to the young man, where he tells him, quote, "When you become a priest, you will be what we call clerical eye candy."
Which is pretty sick.
Yes.
Bojanowski says when he turned down Nowak's advances, the priest became vindictive and jealous of his friendship with Malone's secretary, Father Richard Biernat. Malone and his advisors agree that Nowak went so far as to rifle through Bojanowski's belongings and steal and circulate a letter between Bojanowski and his friend Biernat in an attempt to blackmail them.
So it's a big manipulator, along with the violation of the confessional.
He's too clear. And he has no sense of morality about what he has done.
Exactly. The simple version here is we've got victims and we have a perpetrator. And the perpetrator is Jeff Nowak. And he's done things that are clearly wrong, and I think he's a sick puppy.
Bishop Malone may have considered Father Nowak sick, but he allowed him to remain on the altar at this parish in Cheektowaga with no notice to parishioners. That inaction is what led the bishop's trusted secretary to go public.
I thought I need to do something, so I started recording those meetings because they say one thing, but they do nothing. And so you have one recording in March, then a week later another recording, and nothing is being done.
Bojanowski told Malone about the allegations in writing in January. But for the next 7 months, until August, he allowed Nowak to remain in ministry in Cheektowaga. Again, parishioners say they were left in the dark. In May, Bishop Malone did an interview with ABC News Nightline where he said he'd made mistakes handling adult sexual abuse, but said he now handled allegations transparently, even while it was keeping the Nowak case quiet.
When it comes to an accusation of an adult being abused or some kind of misconduct or harassment, we've tried to handle those things in a quieter way, bring the priest in, send him for assessment, discipline him, sometimes with the hope that he could be restored to some partial ministry, but I see it's the wrong way to do it, and we have not done that since then.
Unlike the other 19 priests the diocese suspended in the last year, Nowak was allowed to stay on the job during the investigation, even though the bishop and his men worried he might hurt other parishioners.
Anything could happen.
And what if there's another person coming to confessional, like Matthew?
Praying on.
And he is the pastor of a parish. And we don't know emotionally, spiritually, or any other way where his mind is and what he is doing to people.
Despite this, the diocese kept secret its inquiry about the priest until 7 Eyewitness News asked about it in May, and did not temporarily remove him from ministry until August.
Bishop Malone has known about the allegations for months.
A day after the I-Team published more allegations. It wasn't until last week, 10 months after the original complaint, that Bishop Malone formally put Nowak on administrative leave. Now the bishop's going to come out and say, look, Father Nowak, we eventually put him on administrative leave.
But the damage was done to Matthew, the victim, who waited months for acknowledgement, months for justice. He was re-victimized again by the church.
Internal diocese emails show Bishop Malone may not have been fully honest with his own staff. When more allegations spilled out about alleged harassment by Nowak against other seminarians, the bishop in April told senior staff the allegations mentioned things that I'd never heard before about him, despite the taped conversations from a month earlier. By May, Nowak's emails show it doesn't appear the diocese had even pressed him about the allegations. When the I-Team contacted Nowak, he wrote in emails to the bishop that he had, quote, not received any correspondence or even verbal word regarding any of this from diocesan officials.
It's not only that they kept it from the people, but Bishop Malone put people in danger in the parish. There was no guarantee that who's not going to do to another man in a confessional the same thing.
So the bishop didn't show up at Mass and say, this is what's happening with your pastor. That didn't happen?
No.
And they didn't put anything in the bulletin saying, this is an update, we want you to know, and just be aware? They didn't do that?
No, they didn't do that. By not making it public, they put people in danger in the parish there. Father Nowak could have easily, Bishop is referring to him as sick puppy. Why would he allow sick puppy to minister, to be a pastor of a parish? If this is how you call a priest, why do you let him minister and be with vulnerable people?
The bishop's former advisor says all of the recordings show Malone was living in fear of blackmail and what information Nowak might have on other priests.
Between you and me, because I trust you, I really do. I hope you trust me.
Yeah.
Jeff Nowak is dangerous.
There's a lot of stuff that Jeff has, so I know that.
Jeff is dangerous. I think if we bring Jeff in, that gets who knows what he's going to do. You and I know he's a loose cannon.
Now, Father Nowak did not respond to our request for comment for this story, but the diocese, in response to this story last night, put out a statement saying the diocese had never received and still has not received any allegation that Father Nowak ever engaged in sexual contact with anyone, child or adult, but of course these allegations are about sexual harassment.
And the bishop is trying to get in front of this, do damage control. Today he called a news conference for 2:30. Charlie, you were not invited into that news conference. They actually cherry-picked the media and the reporters that were going to be allowed inside of that news conference. What's your reaction to that?
So my first reaction was I thought maybe I missed the email, but then I realized this was on purpose and that they had excluded me because of what they see as critical coverage here. We did ask if he could come in anyway, and we were denied at the door.